and I'm going to pass over to our next speaker. Ben, you're going to talk to us about benchmarking behavior classification of biolog data. And I'm interested to hear more about this. So take it away.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for the invitation to speak. So about me, I work for an organization called Earth Species Project. So this is an organization we're interested in applying machine learning methods to better understand animal behavior and animal communication. So we work on a variety of projects under this umbrella, mostly in the audio domain. So we have techniques for fine-grained sound event detection, foundation models for bioacoustics, benchmark data sets for bioacoustics tasks. And then what I'm going to talk about today is a bit different. It regards more about animal behavior and motion. So we're thinking about biologgers, which are these miniature tags mounted on animals. They can record a suite of motion, audio, video, environmental, and geospatial data. So here's a picture of a tag on the back of a minke whale from one of our collaborators and on the tail of a carrion crow from a different collaborator. And here's one of those crow tags. It's very small. And today I'm mostly going to just be focused on motion data. So folks like to use machine learning as a tool for data analysis. So here's some biologger data, and you can see that it's kind of mysterious when you look at it. You can't just read off what is happening. So the desire is to take a machine learning model, which you can, if you can observe some tagged animals and understand what their behaviors are and score your recordings with those behaviors, then you can take those annotations and train a machine learning model to tell you what's happening in the recorded biologger data that you can then apply to recordings where you're not able to observe the animal. And then hopefully you can take these behavioral labels and use them to answer a scientific question, such as how does an individual's activity budget vary with human disturbance? So we were interested in knowing what patterns hold for these methods applied to biologger data at kind of a zoomed out level. So across study systems, sensor types, sampling rates, ethogram definitions, etc. And to do this, we built what's called BEBE, or the Biologger Ethogram Benchmark. So this includes 9 data sets with behavior annotations coming from these 9 species pictured on the right. We formalized this task of what it means to classify behavior in biologger data. We've provided a set of evaluation metrics to measure how good a model is at predicting behavior in these data. And then we've made all of this publicly available, the data sets and code for others to build off of. So we found a few patterns, and I'll talk about a couple of them today. The first one I'll summarize as learned features beat hand-chosen features. So what I mean by this, hand-chosen features, this is sort of the typical workflow is you'll take your biologger data and you will compute some summary statistics like overall dynamic body acceleration, which will then feed into a classical machine learning model like a random forest, which you can then train to predict behaviors. And that's contrasted with learned features, which I essentially mean neural networks. So the idea here is you take your raw data, you feed it into your neural network, which then learns to represent the data in a way that's useful for making these behavior predictions. So this is a results table. Brighter colors are better. So we have the 9 data sets that we tested on. And here's a set of different models that we tested. And these top 3 are neural networks, and the bottom 6 are these hand-chosen features fed into classical models. So looking at the top 2 in particular, we see that these neural networks where they're able to learn the features directly from the data generally perform better, kind of across the board. So this is a bit in contrast to more typical workflows that people are using these days for analyzing this type of data. The second thing that I wanted to describe is, so representation learning enables low data applications. So what I mean by this, low data, for this, we're looking at a situation where we have a small amount of labeled training data, which is really relevant for this field because you can imagine observing an animal that's tagged and scoring their behavior to that biologger data is difficult. So having the ability to train a model with a low amount of data is desirable. So representation learning, what we did here, there was a team at Oxford who took data from human wristwatches. They had, I think, 600,000 hours of data recorded at 30 hertz. And they took the data and they would apply different manipulations to it. So they would reverse time, permute the channels, time warp it. And they had a neural network that was supposed to predict which of these manipulations had been performed. And by doing that, the neural network was able to learn a good way to represent the data that was useful for performing this task. And it turns out that this way of representing the data is actually useful for performing our task, which is predicting behaviors in accelerometry data from animals. So we took these representations from these humans and we fine-tuned it on these 9 different data sets. And we found essentially across the board that this technique of first training on human wristwatch data at 30 hertz and then forgetting about the fact that sampling rate is a thing, or forgetting the fact that this data was from humans originally, we were able to fine-tune and get the best performance. So I think this is kind of a proof of concept for how you might approach low data situations in the future. And I think it's kind of surprising and fun because, using human data might not be at first obvious, and using data at a different sampling rate might not be at first obvious. So a call out to the community. We'd like to work with more people who have biologger data, essentially with more data sets where you have more ability to find patterns of what's true for what happens when we apply these methods across different settings. And then also, if you have a biologger data set that you'd like to apply some machine learning to, we're happy to help. We work with biologists who have data sets that they want to understand better. So yeah, you can reach out, and this is my email. So I should mention that the data and code from this are publicly available. This is our GitHub. And these results are included. We have a preprint. We're undergoing some revisions currently. So the first draft is on archive. And yeah, finally, just a shout out to Maddie Cusimano, who's my lead co-author on this and did as much work as I did. So feel free to reach out, and thank you.
Okay, you answered. Thank you. That was awesome. Ben, you answered my 2 questions I was going to ask in your last 2 slides, which was one, where is the data, the GitHub page, because I couldn't find it on your website. So there it is. And the other thing was, how can people help? But I wonder if there's like data you're really keen to hear from specifically, like types of biologger data or places that you're particularly keen to hear from, or you just in general want anyone with to get in touch if they're interested in working with you?
I think in general, we're really interested, thinking about animal communication. We're kind of coming at this. Originally, we wanted to include more modalities like audio and video to understand how these things interact. And it turns out that this type of data is very complicated, so it made sense to just start with one modality. So if you have multimodal data, that's awesome. But also if you have just accelerometer data, that would also be awesome, especially from birds.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Ben.